Culberson. I'm very concerned about the debt that you talked about. We're almost at $9 trillion, and it happened on your watch. And I want to ask a question about it today, but I want to preface it by taking us back to the end of 2002, early 2003. At that time, you held a town hall meeting, and your purpose in the town hall meeting was to talk about the Iraq War. And I recall that at that meeting, I asked you, sir, you said that at that time George Bush knew about weapons of mass destruction and so on that he could not share with us. And I asked you at the time whether George Tenet, the CIA director, also knew this, and you said, yes, certainly he would. And I pointed out to you that he had recently testified that I saw on C-SPAN before a congressional committee that he himself did not know whether Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, but that he thought Saddam Hussein was well maintained and that he would not use any weapons. But George Tenet said the only condition under which he might use weapons is if we invaded, and then he might use them against our soldiers. And I believe that it was dereliction of duty to put our soldiers at risk and to spend what may be upwards of $2 trillion, according to a Nobel Prize scientist and former World Bank economist, on this war. And that would include taking care of veterans who have been tragically injured from this war. They have to be taken care of for their whole life. Over $2 trillion, sir. And that war was a strategic blunder of enormous proportions, according to General Wesley Clark and several other retired military. Now, here's my question.
Okay.
General Clark right now is very concerned that President Bush is preparing to invade Iran. There are ships heading that way towards the Gulf of Hormuz. I'm not that familiar with the region. And I am concerned because we keep hearing talk that Iran is involved in supplying weapons inside Iraq and we have to stop them and this and that. It's not mentioned that there are very many factions in Iraq and that Saudi Arabia is supplying one side, Iran is supplying the other side, and what we need, according to General Clark, is a enormous diplomacy effort where all of the member countries in the region come together.
Yes, ma'am.
And
you're right.
Right.
I agree.
What I want to know then is you have supported President Bush's unfortunate disastrous error, which I feel, maybe you disagree, and I respect your disagreement. Would you, in the event of President Bush pushing now for Iran and further imperiling our military, further putting us into debt and threatening perhaps just a catastrophe in the region,
right,
would you stand up and say, no, President Bush, I will not support that? Thank you.
Yes, say no!
I agree completely with you about the need for diplomacy. You'll see that I've co-authored a resolution by Congressman Frank Wolf that supports the President's decision to send in 21,000 more troops, and we want to also get out as soon as we can, and we want to bring in all the countries in the region. Congressman Wolf, who was my former chairman on my subcommittee, is a thoughtful, good man, and his resolution essentially embraces what the Baker-Hamilton Commission had suggested. In 2002, when I held the town hall meeting that you referred to, I mean, all we can do in this life, and particularly in time of war, and I as a member of Congress who am not privy to all the classified briefings the President has given, all I can do, all any of us can do, is rely on trust until that trust is violated. And the President at that time had given us, we've been given briefings by the Secretary of Defense, we've been given briefings by Colin Powell, all the members of the Cabinet, the President himself. I mean, when he stands up and looks you in the eye, the Commander-in-Chief looks you in the eye and says, yes, the man has weapons of mass destruction, we need to go in and take him out before he uses them. I absolutely have to take that on faith as the Commander-in-Chief in time of war. So I supported him. At the time, I would vote again the same way. However, I would want to see the resolution changed so that we have a clearly defined exit strategy. I wish we had had in the resolution some guidance from Congress that we expect to get in and out as quickly as possible, that we have, some outline of an exit strategy in the resolution. It was drafted very broadly in an open-ended way because in a time of war, you really do have to trust the Commander-in-Chief. And President Bush has, unlike previous presidents, done a very good job of deferring to his local commanders. Unlike President Johnson, who we all know micromanaged even bombing targets in Vietnam, President Bush has done everything he can to leave it up to local commanders. So I had to make I believe that it was the right thing to do at the time.
Excuse me.
Oh, Iran. I'm going to go right back.
I'm sorry. He fired the people who disagreed with him, sir. I'm sorry to say that. But General Shinseki said,
Yeah.
you cannot do this without, I don't remember if it was 400,000 or 500,000. It was
Right.
however many.
Yes, ma'am.
But he fired the people who disagreed with it. So please don't say that, because I feel like this young lady right here that you're trying to deceive.
So what I understand, what you're saying is, I'm responding to your question about my decision in 2002 and early 2003 to support the war resolution, and I'm giving you my reasoning and the thought process that I went through to make that decision, that I've got to trust my commander-in-chief and think that he's got better information than I do. We knew that Saddam had them at some point. He was bragging about he had these weapons. And, of course, we all know there was a line of 18-wheelers leaving Iraq going into Syria right before the invasion. And we know that many of those vehicles had lots of cash on them, as well as who knows how many weapons of mass destruction. And, in fact, the Iraqi insurgents have just recently pulled out chemical weapons.